This is Gardening Tips Live, and we will get it showing where you all can see it as soon as possible. I know if you're joining us live, you're probably not seeing this part. Let me get that there, and let me find this in my stream, there I found us. I am sharing it in the Facebook group. And I'm going, please click into I can't type today, to comment and see resources we post. Okay, now I am posting that in the Facebook group, so hopefully everyone can find us. I can close a couple different windows I have open here. Do you ever get too many windows open? I definitely do.
And I see us in the Facebook group.
Woohoo! We're there. Okay. Oh, it is a beautiful, it is a beautiful cloudy day with, if I looked right, it's like a 20% chance of rain all day. But they were predicting something in the order of an inch of rain for the day. So we'll see what happens because rain predictions in East Tennessee can be difficult. We're in a ridge and valley system, and you never know which ridge or valley is going to direct the weather. And so they make their best guess. I'm going to do at everyone in the group, but be sure to click into the post. No, that's not what I want. That everyone, there we go. To let people receive notification that we're live. Ah, so, oh, this is Gardening Tips Live. I'm Amy Hahn, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener, and I'm joined by my friends and fellow Master Gardeners, Margot Emery, Toby Johnson, and Brian Townsend, and I'm going to turn my phone to silent because it is dinging over here. Brian Townsend, and being very distracting. There, now. Okay. Um, so that's taken care of. Um, if you are joining us this morning, be sure to click into the video. Um, that is where we do the comments, and we follow the comments that you make so that we can answer your questions live. And then after the show, we actually do post this to YouTube so that it will stay there for, I can't say forever, but for an extended length of time, so it's available to everyone. Also, if you typically don't watch the show live and want to catch us on your own timing, if you subscribe to the Facebook group, you will see when our Gardening Tips live show is posted. It can notify you that. And also other things like the different pruning videos and different talks that the Knox County Master Gardener Speakers Bureau is doing. So that gives you information. What is it that you can be notified of it instead of having to always go look for it. So what is it? Some people like that, some people don't. So if you have any questions, I see we have quite a few people watching live. Um, you can put them in the comments and we'll answer your questions as best we can. So we're going to get started. What is it? If you haven't been with us before, we generally start with a brief slideshow. And my screens are not set up like they should be, so give me a moment to get them to do what I want them to. I do, as many other people do, I call it a love-hate relationship with computers. Sometimes I absolutely love them. And then sometimes they drive me crazy. And, today isn't a real crazy day, but, that.
I want to thank you, Miss Amy, for confirming what I feared. Now I can sleep better at night.
Oh, I'm not sure what that means.
Driving us crazy.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, um, if you've been following me, I'm a gardener who likes to experiment with different things. And this is an experiment I've wanted to do for quite a long time. The fungal network is super important in the garden, and there are some safe to eat mushrooms that you can actually grow in your own garden. So a little bit ago, I got some mushroom spawn, which is like the seed for the mushroom. It's called the King Stropharia or wine cap mushrooms, and you can start that on straw. So I have like 5 different patches of straw in my yard that are piled up several inches high, and we put the King Stropharia mushroom spawn in there, and it's actually growing. The white threads you see in the straw is actually the mushroom spawn. And so, if I understand correctly, it's fairly likely that I'll get some mushrooms in the fall. I do have to make sure it doesn't totally dry out during the summer. So, it's just an experiment. I'll keep you all updated with it. Um, this is another thing that's not really an experiment, but it's something that's going on. I have a 100-gallon bucket, not bucket, bin, feed bin out where near my composting area. And it has tadpoles. So these are all tadpoles. And they were teeny tiny and they are growing and they're starting to get their back legs. And it is just super fun to watch. We're pretty sure they're green frog tadpoles, as we can hear the croak of a green frog um, in our neighbor's pond. So we're pretty sure that's what these are. And it's a pretty good sized frog. I mean, it's like that big when it's full grown, because we've had some full grown ones here in the past in my water lily bucket.
So do you put mosquito dunks in this so you don't have?
I do treat it with mosquito dunks when I notice about once a month. Um, for a while, I was keeping fish. Like I would buy a couple feeder goldfish and put them in the pond, and the goldfish would do a really good job of taking care of the mosquito larvae. But once the frogs found the pond, frogs have very big mouths, and when the frog found the pond, the goldfish disappeared. I'm not saying the frog was guilty, but the timing was suspicious. And I think frogs will eat just about anything that'll fit in their mouth. So I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So now that the frogs have found my water features, um, I don't put goldfish in them. So I do put mosquito dunks. So you can, put um, fish in them. There's Danios, which are small mosquito eater fish. They actually will call them mosquito eaters.
Mhm.
You can put those in, and then you can put goldfish. They'll eat mosquito larvae. Um, so, that is one of the ways that you can handle it. But I do tend to go with the mosquito dunks. They're just easy. I put half a mosquito dunk in here once a month. And you buy them and they come in packs of, it's either 6 or 8. It's enough for a whole summer. So it must be 8. And so I put half in here. I put a quarter in my water lily bucket. And then I've got one of those gorilla cart things, and it fills up with water. And now it's got tadpoles in it too. Because we moved some of the tadpoles around because they were getting crowded. And so I'm putting mosquito dunks in that too. And that takes a quarter of one. Hi, Judy. I'm glad you joined us. If you have any questions, please be sure to put them in the comments. Okay, so now I'm going to go into just an array of some different native plants, some of which I love, some of which I don't love. We're starting off with the one I don't love. This is horse nettle, and it makes little fruits that look like green and yellow cherry tomatoes, which are poisonous. It is in the tomato family. So this is one that if I have gloves on, I pull it up. If I don't have gloves, can you see those spikes there? I mean, it is a thorny plant. And on the underside of the leaves, there's thorns. Do you see those? There's thorns everywhere on horse nettle. And so that is one that I will pull up and try to remove, but I think the birds must like the fruit, and so I always end up with seedlings of it. Now, this is a plant, this is big enough that I think it's a plant that came back from last year, because the roots do survive, um, in the ground. So that is just one, what is it, that I don't love, and most gardeners don't love it. Okay, this is a nice one that I got I think I got last year or the year before. This is Carolina rose, and it is a native rose, also called pasture rose, and it makes rose hips. And rose hips are what they use a lot of times in tea. They have a sort of a citrusy flavor. Okay, and they're high in vitamin C. This is another one. Um, it's got a real sparse flower, and I was going to talk about if you're taking a picture for identification, um, this kind of picture oftentimes won't get you a good identification because a lot of plants, when they go to flower, look real spindly like that. If you can get a picture of the flower, it will almost always give you a good identification. And this is a plant called white avens. It is a native plant, and it's full to partial shade. And so it is one, I didn't plant it. It's one of those things that came in as did most natives in my yard. Now this is one I did plant. This is one of the mountain mints. This is narrow mountain mint, and it is much less aggressive than than the next mountain mint I'll talk about. And these will open up a little bit into that umbral type flower that the pollinators really love. But it just sort of has these really narrow leaves, and it's just a pretty plant, I think. And very much a supporter for the natives and beneficials. Native insects, beneficial insects. This is clustered mountain mint, and it is quite a bit more aggressive. It has spread much more through the area where I planted it. And its flowers aren't open yet, but it does this white top. I've actually heard some people call it like snow on the mountain, but there's a different plant that's called snow on the mountain. So that's where you got to be careful because common names can be confusing.
It's a silvery white, and I thought about trying to
Yeah.
put it some around my foundation because I've got gray as an accent on my house.
If you want some, I'm going to have plenty.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you have mountain
Yeah.
mint, you often have plenty.
Right. That one is a pretty aggressive spreader. Now, the narrow mountain mint isn't. It's pretty much, I mean, it's grown a fair bit in 5 or 6 years, but it hasn't grown near the, what is it? The square footage that the clustered mountain mint has grown in 2 years. So they're very different. Let's see. Okay, so this is one I always leave some of. Oh, there's some horse nettle next to it. But this one right here is passion flower vine. So it does those real pretty, really complicated purple flowers. And it's also the host plant for the Gulf fritillary butterfly. So I definitely let several of those come up in my yard, in my landscape, I should call it. I have found that it's a perennial and its roots seem to be nearly everywhere on my property. But if it comes up like this and I pop it out, it doesn't come up in that same place again. So it's a pretty easy one to, you know, leave it if it pops up in a convenient space. If it comes up in an inconvenient space, you can just pull it out. And so that's pretty easy to manage as far as plants like that. And you always got to look at the black-eyed Susans. This is probably Rudbeckia hirta. I don't know absolutely for sure. Um, it can seed itself pretty aggressively if you have a lot of open ground. We see a lot of seedlings of it in the herb spiral at UT Gardens because there is a lot of just mulched area that's not covered with plants. I don't see it very much in my landscape at home because nearly everything here is covered with plants. So, but it is a beautiful flower. Makes a good cut flower too. And I think this is the last of the native plants. It is a great blueberry year. I have 4 blueberry plants, 3 of which are producing. One needs to be pruned and needs help.
Those really look happy in the sight too. They don't look like they're suffering for acid.
They're a little bit, the tips of the leaves are a little on the yellow side.
Yeah.
So I do need to acidify it. But off the 3 plants that are producing, I picked 2.5 pounds of blueberries yesterday. And this is what's left after picking. So it's been a good blueberry year. I'm very
You've got a
pleased.
nice density of leaves on it. When I had some I was
Yes.
trying to grow that needed more acid, their
Hmm.
leaves also were kind of sparse, but you've got that looks lush.
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned that the new leaves are coming out with the evidence of being a little bit, so it's close, but you can see how yellow the leaves are and how green the veins are. So that's one of the evidence it's having trouble taking up iron, which is um, blueberry plants want the pH to be between like 4.5 and 5.5, which is quite a bit more acid than most plants want in our area, and it's just slightly more acid than our soil wants to be, tends to be. Um, so I need to go out and treat this bed. Sulfur is the product that's usually used, though it does take a while to work. But if I treat it this year, it'll have taken effect by next year, and they should be in better shape. This one back here is the one that didn't produce. You can barely see it in the photo. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. And what is it? So it is much more yellow and it has the sparse leaves like you're talking about.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. And it produced its socks off last year. So, but I do need to prune it. It's getting to where if it did produce, it would be too high for me to pick. So I need to prune it. I need to treat the soil around it. And hopefully next year it'll do better. Okay. Oh, tomato plants. Okay, so tomato plants are really growing aggressively, actively, not aggressively, um, and full of flowers. I went out this morning, just to check in on my plants, and they were covered with dew. I highly recommend do not touch your plants when they're covered with dew. It's really easy to transmit fungal diseases um, from the ground to the plants, from one plant to another. Um, And there's also a lot of things, like a lot of microbes that live on your hands, um, that aren't damaging to us, but with the moisture, they could damage. There could be something that could be harmful to your plants. So try not to touch them when they're damp or when they're wet. You'll just have a lot fewer issues later. The other thing I do tell people, and it's painful to do it, when you first plant your tomato plants, pick off any flowers or flower buds. And so we're starting to see reports of blossom end rot on tomatoes. And I really do want to have a conversation and say, were the buds for the ones that are blossom end rotty on the plant when you planted it? I don't know that that's the only cause, but very oftentimes that first set of fruits end up with blossom end rot. And blossom end rot is a symptom of the roots not being able to move water, which contains calcium, up into the developing fruits. And so when you first plant your plant, its root system is very small and it can't transport a lot of water or minerals, including calcium. So it is a calcium issue, but it's more about transporting the calcium. So many times, by the time that second set of fruit is coming on your plant, it's got a big enough root system to pull that calcium up. So people get all these products that say, what is it? There's a spray that says it'll stop blossom end rot. But if you just wait and don't do anything, your second flush of fruit usually will not have blossom end rot. So it's not an issue with the calcium, and it's an issue with the plant being able to pull that calcium up into the developing fruit. Okay, so speaking of developing fruit, I
This
have,
image is going to strike envy in lots of people's hearts.
yeah. Now this is a plant I did purchase. I did pull the first flush of flowers off. It had some flowers when I planted it. I did buy it from a garden center. It is in a container that's warm, that stays warmer than the in-ground bed. Now, these plants aren't as big and full because I do prune these ones. So you can tell where I've taken off a sucker here. And if you look here, you can see there's a sucker here that I'm letting develop. This is a sucker here. I do not prune my main crop tomatoes, but I do prune. This one's in a container with a couple other plants. And so the desire for these plants was early fruit. So I have them in a situation where they're likely to give me early fruit, but they always stay green way, way longer than I want them to. And if I get too hungry for tomatoes, I will just make fried green tomatoes. And so that is the end of my slideshow for today. Let me stop sharing if I can find the right button. But it always is sad when you have these tomatoes growing and you realize the bottom's rotting out. I mean, it is, heartbreaking. And I definitely have found some varieties are much more prone to that than others. Some of the Roma tomato varieties are horrible on that. Yeah, Brian.
I have I've read and I have not confirmed it,
Hmm.
but the blossom end rot can be cut out and the rest of the tomato be used.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've definitely done that.
But I like to encourage people and tell them, okay, when you had this issue with the blossom end rot and you think that you did something wrong right there,
Right.
it's an opportunity to learn from
Mhm.
our mistake right there. Once we learn, we are so much better.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I mean, it definitely is something to learn from. And then I think, what is it? There's always new stuff to learn with gardening, which is one of the things I
Oh
love
yeah,
about it.
yeah.
Always stuff to experiment with, always different things to try. Um, and before we get too far into the time, Toby has something about making and filling and all that stuff about doing raised beds.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And this is a great segue because you talked about
Mhm.
there's always something new to try. Well, I'm trying something new with my raised bed, so I thought I'd
Oh,
share what
awesome.
I'm doing.
Hmm.
So let me share my screen and I'll show you what I'm up to.
Yeah,
So can you all see that?
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
so. Let me make sure it's showing up. Now, yes, it's showing up on Facebook. And I will be
Awesome.
quiet while you
Awesome.
talk so it'll show your face.
So if you've been following me at all, I've been talking about moving to Washington State. I'm here right now for the summer. And I want to show you what I'm doing. And I thought some of the projects we're working on we have about 5 acres. Uh, we have some lovely orchard trees, but they have not been managed well. They haven't been pruned. And we have a grow house. But here's where we're living. We're living across, so you get a sense of our microclimate. We live when we live here in the summer, we live near Paulsbo, Washington. So we're on the left-hand side, that body of water is Hood Canal, and on the right-hand side, that's Puget Sound. We're across from Seattle. So we're right in the shade of the Olympic Mountains. And one thing I've noticed about our climate is that in the winter, it's sunny in the morning and cloudy in the afternoon. And in the summer, it's cloudy in the morning and sunny in the afternoon. So, and in the summer, it actually gets quite dry in our yard. We in our acreage, we have a lot of open, I'll show you in a minute, we have a lot of open, it's been cleared years ago. So we have a lot of open field, and so the sun is beating down. So it's actually a good place for vegetables, which is exciting. But we also have some microclimate and some environmental things to think about. So we have lots of open land. This is uh, from our back. This is sort of what our back garden looks like, our backyard. But we have lots of wildlife. So we have deer, and they will come and suck down all of those the bird feeders. They love to go up to the bird feeders and start eating. So we've got to figure that out. But we've got black bear. We haven't seen any bear yet, but we know they're around in the community because we've talked to folks. A couple days ago, we saw a coyote in the daytime just trotting through our yard. I've seen a shrew running across the gravel in our driveway. What else do we have? We have heron, we have bald eagle. We've seen heron in our pond in the back. Lots of insects, snakes, lots of birds. We put up a hummingbird feeder in front of our kitchen window, so we have hummingbirds. So there's a lot going on in our acreage, in our garden. And so we want to work with with nature. And also we have to protect our plants. So on our property, we also have a grow house. And back in the day, the previous owners had a medical marijuana farm. And I know it sounds crazy, but it was legal. In fact, our tax parcel, this was considered agriculture. So this sort of 1,000 square foot or 800 square foot grow house was not taxed because it was agriculture. So we had 2 tax parcels when we bought our land. Anyway, it's beautiful. It's very tall. It was covered with poly when we bought the property, but the poly does degrade over time and tear with UV rays and everything. So we've taken off the poly, but it's a lovely place, and it's sheltered between our shop and then another little. It's sort of sheltered between 2 buildings, and so it's definitely a great place to think about planting. And so rather than the neighbors across the way actually just planted in the ground. They didn't use raised beds. but our soil is fairly, it's glacial till, so it's fairly sandy. And I didn't want to plant raised beds and have to build a big fence. So there's a lot I'm thinking about as we establish some of our raised beds. So this is our grow house for now. And so one of the things, and I've talked about a couple of years ago, I did a talk on permaculture, but I'm really thinking about permaculture, which is permanent agriculture. It's really an integrative way to work with nature. And so that's sort of an overall philosophy of what we do in our garden or what we plan to do. So, for example, with our fruit trees, I'm going to build beds and I'm going to do fruit guilds, which are beneficial plants that help sustain the fruit tree, and everything works together. So there's different places in the garden where I'm trying to put these sort of principles in place and really, as much as I can, create sort of a self-sustaining group or self-sustaining type of approach to what we do. And so as I pick and choose what I'm doing in my garden, I always have that kind of permaculture. I don't think I'll be able to go 100%, but as much as I can work with nature doing its thing, all the better. So hugelkultur, or I call it hugelkultur, and I know I'm mispronouncing, is one of those kind of approaches where you're allowing nature to do its thing, and you're just kind of nudging it along by the way that you are bringing materials together. And so this was something that was developed decades, centuries ago. It was an ancient method used in Eastern Europe. So hence the name is very Eastern European. And it's really about working with the plant material, and having it sort of compost in place. There's a lot of reasons why you want to do this. And this was the approach that I decided to use in my raised beds. And I'm going to show you the method I used. So what happens is it's sort of like lasagna gardening. People will do layered gardening in their beds as well. They call it lasagna gardening. And it's really the goals are to create water efficiency, because the woody base will act as a water retainer. And believe it or not, in Western Washington, in our garden, it gets really, from about May till October, it doesn't rain that much, which is crazy. I can't believe it, but that's how it is now. And so, we're not going to be able to we're probably not going to set up a big watering system. So we got to make sure we're really being efficient with our water. It also, as things decompose, it creates a richness in nutrients. So I won't have to use as much fertilizer, or, it's creating really its own compost from below. It also promotes soil structure that's, will drain and aerate. It won't be heavy. Once they are established, they're fairly low maintenance. I probably won't need to do a lot of weeding, I will have to water, obviously, but it will also hold water. And then it also, because there's biodiversity, it also creates, it creates a space for different types of pollinators and beneficial organisms to start growing. And so I'm not taking something that's very sort of I don't know I'm trying to think of the word. It's really early in the morning here. It's like 6:30. So, but it's not like, garden soil that has no microorganism, right? We're actually bringing things from the garden in, and then they actually can stay productive for a very long time. Now, why did I choose this type of approach? Partly because we have this philosophy of permaculture, but also because when we moved to Knoxville about 15 years ago, we built raised beds, and this is that learning from doing, right? We bought just soil, and we had a truckload full of just soil uh, deposited at our house, and that's how we filled our raised beds. And then we started over the next 15 years working very hard to amend those boxes. So we didn't realize the soil was going to be really clay, because I didn't know the
Yeah.
soil here, and I didn't know what to look for, because we all start somewhere. And
Mhm.
I had done vegetable gardening in Washington State all my life, but I didn't really know Tennessee soils. So we had to put sand in, we put different types of things to improve the soil structure. I started composting in place. I started doing cover crops. I started adding, I had to, every year it was a pain to add and amend the soil in our boxes, because we started with the wrong foundation.
Mm.
And so this time around, I thought, you know what? I'm going to start with the absolute right foundation of my boxes.
Yeah.
Is
So,
this church, sir?
oh, I'm hearing something. I think it's so
Yeah.
it starts with, so this is a sort of, we start with the most coarse layer on the bottom. So it's logs and then branches and sticks. And then uh, there's different ways people approach this. If you go online, there's sort of a variety of ways that there's slight differences
Mm-hmm.
in the layers that people use. And I'll show you the layers I use, but it's really a combination of your carbon and your nitrogen. And you're creating, and you want to put your biggest, most coarse material, your logs and sticks on the bottom, and then you kind of work your way up. So I'm going to show you how I did this. It's a really interesting, and I had been, so first of all, when we think about orientation of your garden beds, so if you're thinking about building garden beds, I did a fair amount of research on whether or not my garden bed should be oriented north-south or east-west.
Mm.
And north-south, east-west is a more ideal orientation if you have the choice. So
Mm-hmm.
the reason is the sun is going to go, this is facing east-west. So the sun is going to go from the east to the west, and both sides, let's say I had a tomato plant or some tall vine like a cucumber, then I'm going to get sun on either side. Now, our sun is a little bit to the south as well, so it's not going to be 100%. But if I would have oriented these boxes north-south, when the sun started in the east, it would only get sun on that side of the plant. And then at the end of the day, we get sun on the other side. We live again in a place that our growing season, our tomatoes are not even fruiting yet. So it's very different than in Tennessee, where I can plant tomatoes and expect to,
Mm-hmm.
start harvesting in July. That's not
Yeah.
happening. It's very short window here. So I have to make sure that I'm optimizing my sun. The other thing I did here, when I started figuring out to build my boxes, I also realized that we may move these boxes. We may build or buy a different grow house at some point in the future. So I didn't want to build, and I've built boxes, and I wanted to install temporary boxes. So you'll see these blocks that you can get at, any big box store. They are, you see the blocks there, and I put down landscape fabric because I don't want to really mess up the gravel too much. I know it will get messed up a little bit, but I wanted something permeable, but also something that maybe will protect my gravel a little bit.
Is
So
there
these
a
blocks,
particular name for those kind of blocks?
I don't know. They're like raised bed blocks. I mean, they're just
Oh,
garden,
cool.
and they stack on one another. I'll show you. And you can hammer in a piece of rebar, and they're 6 inches tall. So you can make your raised bed 6 inches, 12 inches, 18 inches. And you can hammer in a piece of rebar if you want to really hold them together. We didn't do that, but so they're relatively inexpensive. So and I always say bring a friend. This is my friend Heidi. She's been my friend since high school. We've known each other, oh boy, over 40 years at least.
Oh, fun.
We've been friends forever, and she's starting to learn gardening. So the best way for your friends to learn gardening is to come help you do your gardening. That she's like, hey, I want to come out. Plus, she had a circular saw, a chop saw, so it made our lives easier.
Oh,
So we started,
nice.
so you take these blocks and you stack them on one another, and then you can put wood. Now we got 2x6s. I don't recommend 1x. It doesn't fit in the
Mm-hmm.
block well, and also it will rot quickly. So we decided to go
Yeah.
18 inches deep because I wanted to have enough room to put in all of the materials that I want to put in. The
Yeah.
blocks have little slots in them that you can put the wood in. So these are approximately 4 by 8 foot beds, and
Mm.
we did 4 of them. So
Okay.
we were having a lot of fun. But it takes, I will say this, it looks easy. It is simple, but it does take time. It took us the entire
Mm-hmm.
day to put these boxes together, and you wouldn't think that, but we had to cut the,
Yeah.
we had to cut the wood, et cetera, et cetera. So here they are in place inside our grow house. So for the next couple weekends, we have been filling them. And you can see my husband out there. He is limbing up some of our trees in our yard. We have some of the trees are touching the ground, or they have broken branches, and we also need to mow under them. So we've been limbing up some of our trees. We've also been doing some pruning in our some limited pruning in our fruit orchard. It's not really the time of year you're really supposed to, in your fruit orchard, you're really supposed to be pruning in February, but there are so many branches, and I think the plants are suffering because there's a lot of suckers and there's a lot of extra branches so we're being kind of judicious. Sometimes, there's the old saying, prune when the shears are
Mm-hmm.
sharp. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we're creating plant material to put in our boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see on the left, I pruned up it's a beautiful little apple tree. Plus the deer will walk by it and break branches if it's
Oh.
too low to the ground. So I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
protect these trees. So this is the first layer. Now you'll also notice that I put plastic around the sides of the box.
Mm-hmm.
We have some friends who built boxes in Knoxville like these a few months ago, and their advice was, hey, once you start watering, all the soil and water and mud starts oozing out the sides of the boxes. And we're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're gonna put a little bit of plastic around the inside. So
Mm-hmm.
we did that. So you can see there's logs and sticks we've been filling the boxes with. The
Yeah.
next layer is really more leaves. We're putting a little bit we have a lot of conifers, obviously, in Western Washington. So we're putting some conifers, but I'm trying not to overdo it because I don't want the soil to be too acid.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next level, you can put some compost. And we actually had leftover redwood sort of compost in our yard when the previous owners left. So we're using everything we're using in these box. Well, not everything, but a lot of what we're using is already in our yard. So we're filling it in with a little bit of compost as well. Or I'm sorry, not compost, mulch, not compost, mulch. So next level on the left is you can take grass clippings. And we've been clipping by hand some of the grass. We're going to start to build beds around our fruit trees. And we have blueberry bushes as well that they're not doing well because they're competing with grass. Everything has grass growing right up next to it. And blueberry bushes in particular do not like to compete with grass and weeds. So we're also being very careful to not include weeds in what we're putting for this layer, because if you put weeds in here, or Himalayan blackberry, any of that, it's going to grow up. There's a high chance it's going to grow up in your box. So we didn't want to do that. Now you're probably wondering what those bags are. I had been saving food scraps from my small compost bin, and I'd put them in a bucket on my back porch, and I had them in compostable bags. And so when we put that stuff in there at that layer, that's the food waste sort of layer. It was really stinky, I have to say. My husband's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oof, what is that?" I go, "It's composting material. It's really great. It's almost like compost." There was like water coming out. There was like juicy, nasty smelling water. And I was like, it's perfect. Ah, I felt like a mad scientist. Next layer
Nitrogen.
is cardboard. And I had purposefully saved, this was from our shower install when we remodeled. I had my husband save save big pieces and boxes from our renovation. And he was just like, at the time, he's like, why are you saving this stuff? And I said, I have a plan. I have a plan. And now he's like, oh, I see your plan. I said, yes, there are so many uses for cardboard in the garden. You can use it in your beds to tamp down weeds and put mulch over it. There's so many uses for cardboard. And this cardboard does not have any waxy coating on it. So it's good for this layer. Next layer is steer manure. Now, it could be any kind of compost. It could be your own compost. It could be chicken manure, steer manure, other types of mushroom compost. We chose steer manure because it was inexpensive and easy to get. So there are feedlots in central Washington, and there's a lot of compost that comes from them. So we put our steer manure in, and you can see put a fairly, solid layer. I also just wanted to show my technique on the right-hand side for cutting open bags whenever you're buying mulch or compost or anything in a bag, soil. I like to split it like a cross and then open it up and then turn the bag over. I used to split it at the top and then I get stuff stuck in the corners. And so I just thought I'd share that if it drives them crazy that they're getting material stuck in the corners of their bags.
That's a
So
great idea. Thanks.
yeah, just it's annoying, right? It's like, oh, there's that little bit in that corner and I can't get it out.
Yeah.
So that's how we and you can see I've got this is an 18-inch bed. You can see those blocks there on the right-hand side. There's a hole in the top. So if you wanted to pound in a piece of rebar at each corner to keep it in place, I'm finding that they're really not bending right now, but that could change as things start to decompose, that they're not bowing out or moving. If they do bow out, if the boards start bowing out, what I'll take is some scrap 2x6 that I have from our trimming down and just screw it into the midway through the 8-foot length on the inside. And that will keep them from bowing.
Yeah.
So
the
then we put
2-inch
our raised
board.
bed soil in. So this is saving me, by the way, a lot of money. Imagine if I had to buy, 20 of these raised bed soil bricks to fill up that 18-inch deep bed. It would cost me a lot of money. And I'm a cheap gardener.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't want my garden soil to just, if I just put raised bed soil and some compost in, then, it would rain, the garden soil would start to tamp down, and, then we have problems that way. So I really got some aeration underneath. Now I have that, it's not, the air underneath is not going to bother the roots of the plants above because I have that sheet of you guys,
Cardboard.
it's so morning here, of cardboard. And so when the cardboard gets wet, it will start to also decompose. So everything will kind of decompose. The only things that are left to do, and you can see I still have to do those 3 beds in the back. Sourcing from your yard enough material does take time. And we still have more pruning and things to do. And we also had some deadfall. So we cut up deadfall as well. We have a new electric chainsaw, and we are having a lot of fun with that electric chainsaw. It's amazing because it's so quiet. So next up that I want to do is on the grow house sides. You can see the sides here. I do have deer, and we do have bunnies, and we do have other things, other critters. And so I'm not going to poly the whole house. I'm just going to poly the sides so that it keeps the deer and the other critters from coming in. The doors on each end, we have doors that shut on each end of the grow house, but I'm going to poly that up, and I'm just going to use a hammer tacker and just do, because it's not meant to be permanent. And that'll keep the critters out, and we'll poly all the way down. And it'll also keep the wind out and create a very warm microclimate inside, which will help our peppers and tomatoes. The other thing I'm going to do is I purposefully situated these beds close to the side of the grow house, because these ribs in the grow house, I can build trellises that I can connect to the sides of the grow house up tall. And the trellises I'm going to be building from trees, small saplings that we needed to cut down that are really straight. So when we cut those down last year, I said, we're going to keep these. We have 8-foot lengths. And I said to my husband, we're going to keep these and I'm going to make things out of them. We can make, my husband wants to try building wattle fences, which is really interesting. I can't wait to see how that goes. But so we're using everything we can from whatever we take from the garden. So my trellising will all be made of these saplings that are very, sort of straight. So anyway, so I still need to do polysiding. I also need to do worms because we don't have any native soil in this, although I could amend with native soil. Even if we add native soil, there's no guarantee that it's bringing worms with it. And we have landscape fabric underneath, so the worms can't really get through. So I'm going to have to amend, I want to have worms in my bed. So I'm going to buy some worms, and get, introduce some worms to the bed.
Oh, cool.
And then I'm adding plants. I still haven't added my plant material yet. And then I'm going to mulch on the top with straw, most likely. So we still do need to have a mulch layer over our, to protect our plants, to keep water in, and to protect our plants and to protect us from getting weeds. We'll still get weeds, but it's better when you have a little bit of mulch. Keeps your, keeps your plants protected, and it keeps the soil from eroding. And so the last layer that I haven't put on yet is the mulch layer. So that's what I got. The only thing I will remind people of, I always like to do it, don't forget, and there really isn't anything to forget. It's just put the layers on, follow the layers. You can find different approaches. I like to use what we have in our garden, but I knew I had cardboard, I knew I had branches, I knew I had logs. There were things I had to buy. I had to buy compost and I had to buy soil. But you know what? We're going to build compost bins soon, and then I will have my own compost as well. So, but there are many not things you can recycle in the garden to create your own boxes. And you don't have to buy a dump truck full of soil. And in this case, you'd be smarter to buy, if you're going to go that route, it'd be smarter to buy really good raised bed soil. We didn't do that in Knoxville, and we spent over a decade amending. Now, of course, we always have to amend our soil every year, and it's good to plant cover crops. So we weren't doing it completely wrong, but we set ourselves up for a lot of extra work in Knoxville the first time around. So this time around, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to set myself up for success. I'm going to work with nature, not against it, and let it do its thing. So that's what do you guys think?
Looks
This is
great.
awesome, Toby. And you're right. You're gonna set yourself up for a lot less work this time around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll let you know, I expect, over the years, it'll take a long time. Some of those logs are like that big.
Yeah.
So it will take a few years for it to really, but it will start to go down. And then I have to you have to figure out, like, okay, do I start all over? What do I do when everything is, but it's supposed to really maintain itself for several years. So I don't expect to have to do a lot except top off.
Yeah, you'll need to top it off.
For sure. Yeah.
Because that green material you put in is definitely going to shrink down, pretty quickly.
It already has, I had a big, we're doing such at a large level. We have big garbage cans full of like grass clippings.
Yeah.
I will say one thing we're not doing. We have a lot of gravel that we're gonna change and not have so much gravel, but we have a lot of grass coming up in our gravel, and my husband, because it's such a big area, my husband had to use herbicide, and we will not put anything. I'm not putting anything in these boxes that have any herbicide on them.
Right.
I don't want to have anything like that in my bed. So
yeah.
So the
Uh,
grass we've clipped has never had, well, I can't say it's never had, but we haven't put any herbicide on it.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, what is another thing? Okay, so how many inches above the cardboard do you have?
It's about 10, 8 to 10.
Okay, so most of your plant roots are going to be in that area, at least for the
Yes,
initial.
yes. And we thought of that
Yeah.
when we were filling in. My husband would
Mhm.
say, well, I think that's enough soil because we had a layer of compost and then a
Right.
layer of soil. And I said, no, not enough yet because we got to make sure the
Mhm.
plant roots. Now, different vegetable plants have different
Right.
root levels, like lettuce doesn't really have long,
Mhm.
but tomatoes have pretty long roots. So I'm
Yeah.
also hoping, that the cardboard does decompose fairly quickly,
Yeah.
but you've got to have a fair amount if you're going to plant vegetable plants with
Hmm.
uh, roots.
Right.
And the other thing with, that I'm going to plant sort of my tomatoes I'm going to plant and I've had tomatoes, they're in pots growing on my deck for like a month,
Hmm.
so it's not
Right.
like planting brand new baby plants. Although some of
Yeah.
them are small. It's also, I
Mhm.
have to get used to when things start here and end here. It's the climate is way different.
Oh, it's a real different climate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I can
Timing.
trench in tomatoes this way, right?
Hmm. Oh, yeah, you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll
And
probably
no,
do that.
just
But yeah,
just
we
be
had to
very
make sure.
careful. I would actually, if you're doing that, um, let them get a little dry so
Hmm.
they're not as brittle, because I have accidentally broken off the top of a tomato plant trenching it in.
When it was watered,
When it was watered, because it was real stiff and brittle.
uh, turgid, yeah,
Right, yeah. And I actually because you do the trench and you sort of angle it up.
right.
And so be really careful about that. So you
Yeah.
might want to let it get a little bit dry so it's more flexible.
Yeah. The
I
other
know
thing
that's
I can
not
imagine
normally
that when
what you
I
want to do.
give it a good soak, it'll
And then
it'll
give it a good
really want
soak
to
once
suck
it's
up
in the
that water and
ground.
like grow vigorously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but be really careful when you're putting it in
Yeah.
when you're trenching it.
I'm probably gonna go, that there's still some tomato plants in our garden centers, and
Yeah.
some of them are really big
Uh-huh.
plants. And I'm probably gonna go buy a few really big ones
Hmm.
because my growing season is so tiny here.
Right.
Now, in the future, I have decided that I can put things in earlier if I both have the grow house poly, but
Hmm.
I also bought irrigation tubing to create and some uh, rebar to create like a cover over these beds. So I can
Mm.
have a grow house within a grow house in the
Oh,
early
okay. Yeah, I
season.
understand.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I got. I hope this is
Yeah, that's
inspiring
really
to
cool.
folks. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's fun.
But also using what's on your property,
Hmm.
in a little bit different way than it was used in the past.
Yeah.
Though I must admit that that looks like it was a beautiful greenhouse when it was covered.
Yes. Yes, it
Yeah.
is still a beautiful greenhouse. My husband and I are debating, like, he
Yeah.
doesn't want to keep it. I do.
Yeah. And hi, Susan. Glad you found us, even though it's toward the end. It's actually 10 o'clock right now. And so I think we're gonna have to call our show done.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to leave in about 5-10 minutes from my house. So what is it? Glad you all could join us. We've enjoyed talking this morning and hope you're having a great time in your gardens. Um, UT Gardens is having a Buzz in the Garden event on Tuesday evening. So you might want to check that out. Also, various farmers markets. Um, so there's a lot of things going on. And so if you want to join us for any of that stuff, we would enjoy seeing you. And I will, what is it? Brian's at Dixie Lee Farmers Market right now. And what is it on Wednesday? You'll be at Tellico Village in the morning, their farmers market. And then on Thursday evening, you'll be at Hardin Valley Farmers Market, right?
At Pavilion Farmers Market.
Hardin Valley Pavilion Farmers Market.
Right.
Okay, I think I've got it all. And so, what is it? If you see one of us out in the wild, be sure to say hi and happy gardening, everyone. We'll talk to you all later. See you next week.
Have a great week.